Can you make money by being creative with your investments? The answer is yes. And today we're going to talk about 6 ways that you can add value to your apartment buildings by thinking creative. So if you're a smart investor, you're doing the value add approach where you would contribute to increasing the value of your building by increasing rents and decreasing expenses, right? It's a classic way to create additional income and additional wealth. But oftentimes there's some pretty tried and true methods that investors follow, and when they're exhausted, they quit. Today, I'm going to share with you 6 different ways that we can add value by thinking a little more creatively than the average investor. So the first one is to change or expand your zoning. So this is one that I see investors overlook all the time, where they say, okay, the building is what it is, right? But if you have a zoning that would allow for a greater density and you have space somewhere on the property to put additional units, or maybe you have like really big 3-bedroom units that you can cut up and make into 2 units from 1, that can be a tremendous way to increase the value of your building by both rents as well as unit counts. So the key here is the zoning, because a lot of municipalities will state that the zoning's allowed a certain density, and once you've reached that, no more. There is, however, a lot of properties that have a pre-existing non-conforming use. So a great example of this would be where there's an apartment building that's in the middle of a regular residential neighborhood. That building was probably built before there was zoning in that place, so it's considered a non-conforming pre-existing use. So what a lot of municipalities have is a section in their code that says a pre-existing use is allowed to continue or expand by a certain percentage. So some municipalities might say it's allowed to expand by an additional 50%. So if you have currently a 20-unit apartment building, maybe you're allowed to expand that up to 30. So make sure you look at the zoning and understand what it says. And keynote here, sometimes the zoning officers really kind of tell you what they wanted to say versus what you're legally allowed to say. So if you're not comfortable navigating a zoning code by yourself, ask an attorney to review it on your behalf, because it would be well worth the money if you're able to expand that. Sometimes also you could ask for a variance, which could be something like if you have a whole bunch of parking on your property that's not being used, you might be able to ask for a variance to decrease the parking that's not being used and add some more units there. Or maybe you can rent those parking spaces instead of allotting them just for your apartments. So key thing, zoning. Number 2, increase the class of the building. Now, a lot of investors are thinking about doing this, but they think they need to spend a whole bunch of money to do so. Not so. Think about a few really small key things that you can do to increase the classification of the building and things that a better quality tenant would want, right? So for example, anything that's tech related is going to attract a more affluent renter. Ring doorbells, security cameras, that type of thing. If you include internet with smart door locks, those things really appeal to a younger, more affluent renter population. So adding those can really increase value without a lot of cost. And something that I see a lot of people ignore is smell. So not anything against people who smoke, but if you enter an apartment building and it reeks like smoke, you are going to detract a whole bunch of renters. So if you make sure it smells clean, no pets, no smoke, and something that's pleasant. So hotels are amazing at doing this. If you go in a hotel, it smells great. That's not by accident. That is because they are trying to create an experience for the people who come and want to stay. So it's super simple to address the smell, to make it something pleasant in your building, and that in and of itself can help to elevate the building by attracting better tenants, which of course then help to bring it into a higher classification of investment. The third thing is to appeal the taxes. And this is another one that I see so many investors not really understand or really be able to incorporate well. And it's a little tricky because you really got to understand the nuances in the code, because it's a little confusing if you look at a property record and you say, okay, the assessment is less than what I paid for it, So, of course, the taxes are good, I shouldn't appeal. Not the case. What you want to understand is how your building compares to the buildings that are very similar. So if you go out and make sure you're comparing apples to apples, so if you're in a city that has the higher taxing level, then you're not going to want to compare it to a municipality next door that has a lower. So make sure it's apples to apples, similar properties in the same area. They don't have to have the same unit counts, but if you can look at it on a tax per unit basis, and you say, okay, this one has a couple thousand per unit, where they have 2,000 and maybe my building has 3,000 per unit. That's going to help you understand whether or not it's equal. And if your building is assessed higher than what all the other properties are, there's a pretty good chance it was too high to begin with, which means you have a case for a property tax appeal. So again, you can hire professionals. Usually commercial appraisers can help with this, and there's a whole classification of people out there who do nothing but property tax appeals. So you can always find a professional to help you if you're not sure how to go about this, but it can make a huge difference. So even if you get your property taxes reduced by $5,000 a year, if you take that $5,000 and capitalize it at a 7% cap rate, that's going to add a ton of value to your property. So number 4 is extra land. If you have extra land anywhere on your property that's not being utilized or really monetized well, you should make sure that you're using that. So if you have a huge lawn area that's costing you money, not making you money, see if you can subdivide it. Maybe it's on a high traffic road and it can make a great retail pad. That could be a tremendous value. If you have extra parking that's not being used, again, look at your zoning, see if you could build some more units in that land that's just used for extra parking. Again, costing you money because you're removing snow. And just make sure that the property in of itself is well utilized, and that stuff that's costing you money then is making you money instead. Number 5 is extra area within the building. So for example, I have a client who bought a building and the hallways were huge, like it was a property that was converted from a warehouse into apartments, and the hallways are like 12 feet wide. So what they did is they took that space and actually built closets into the hallway area that faced the units, so that each one of those units now had huge closets, which is a great amenity for those customers and renters, and hardly cost them very much to put those in. And other great ways is doing storage lockers, vending machines, ATMs, all kinds of stuff that you can put in that space to help monetize it and create some more value. And then the 6th one is utilities. Now this is one that a lot of people talk about, standard things like separately metering, doing the RUBS program, but one that I see a lot of people get wrong. And here's what they do. They go in, they say, okay, it's a natural gas boiler. We're going to take it out, put electric baseboard in everything because it's super cheap. And of course, the tenant pays for it. But the problem is you are devaluing the building, because then the tenant has to allocate a whole bunch more of their resources to pay for inefficient electric heat. Whereas if you put in a nice natural gas furnace with central air conditioning, you're elevating for your tenant, because that's very efficient, and giving them central air conditioning, again, attracting a better tenant. You're going to be able to charge more rent for it, making your building a higher class, and giving it longer longevity. So don't just think about the immediate when thinking about utilities. You want to make something that's going to attract the better class of tenant and overall give you a solid basis. So I hope those 6 things brought you some value today. If so, please like, comment, and share. And if you're looking for investments within Pennsylvania or Maryland, please reach out to us. We're happy to help.